Good evening. Sorry, I was just a bit busy. Have you seen what I've got? It's out today. Welcome to the 11th virtual Noir at the Bar. I'm Vic Watson with my not very well cut fringe. Tonight we are celebrating the launch of Noir from the Bar, our charity anthology featuring 30 amazing writers who are either going to appear at this very bar or have already appeared. All of the profits from this book go to the NHS. It has been put together by our wonderful Simon Buick in 6 weeks. Now to do with me, all to do with Simon and some of the very lovely people who've helped him out. If you haven't downloaded it, that's the link to do so right there. Or you can get a paperback like me and be swish. Let's get hashtag Noir from the Bar trending alongside hashtag VNATB, as always. If you hear a quote that you like through the duration of this evening, put it in the chat and we'll consider it for quote of the week. I mean, last week I won it, but whatever. You know, someone else has got to do it this week. As always, we've got the chat, so come on in and have a good natter, but not while people are reading, that would just be rude. You've got the Q&A, so if you want to ask any questions to any of our readers, please just pop it in there and I will try my very best to ask them. Some of you might have noticed we've had some pretty cool music this evening. Woo! Thanks to Martin Stevenson for letting us use that. I think that's everything I've got to tell you. Download the book. Oh yeah. If you'd like to enter the prize draw tonight to win a free book, please just email vnatb20@gmail.com. But because we're celebrating the launch of Noir from the Bar, please use the subject line, congratulations this week, please, just to keep things different. And if you do want to put your hands in your pocket because you're not an actual bar, you're not paying a £5 for a pint, if you want to keep this very lovely endeavour going, please just think about popping over to my Ko-fi. I don't get any money, Simon doesn't get any money, even though he deserves all of the money. Yeah, all of your donations go to fund the upkeep of this very bar. So without further ado, we have 10 amazing writers for you tonight. I'm going to dive in to the not so ratty, not so tatty, lovely hat. And our first reader this evening is Andrea Carter. So let me tell you a little bit about Andrea Carter. Andrea is the author of the Inishowen Mysteries, most recently Murder at Graysbridge and The Body Falls. The series will shortly be adapted for television. Woo! Forgot to tell you, if you hear something you really like, give us a woo. Andrea studied law at Trinity College Dublin and practiced as both a solicitor and barrister before turning to write crime novels. The Sunday Times has said Carter excels in recreating the cloistered, gossipy confines of a small Irish village. The Inishowen Peninsula community, where everybody knows everybody else's business, is a fine stand-in for the managed drawing room society of a Christie mystery. So everybody, without further ado, please welcome our first reader tonight, Andrea Carter.
I think I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear me? Yes, great. Evening, everyone. And I'm first up. Not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but thank you very much, Vic and Simon, for having me on. And I'm really looking forward to this evening, and I'm looking forward to listening to everybody else's readings as well. As Vic said, my name's Andrea Carter. I'm the author of the Inishowen Mysteries. They're published by Little Brown, and they're set in the Inishowen Peninsula, which is the most northerly peninsula in Ireland. It's County Donegal. And they feature an amateur sleuth called Ben O'Keefe, or Benedict O'Keefe, it's a woman, and she runs the most northerly solicitor's practice in the country. So it's last legal advice before Iceland. And there are 5 books in the series. The 5th one, The Body Falls. Oh, it's back to front, but The Body Falls was published in Ireland and in ebook on the 2nd of April, and will be published in the UK, will come out in the UK in October. And I'm going to read from The Body Falls, and it's going to be my first time reading from the book because all of my launch events were cancelled, so bear with me. In The Body Falls, there has been torrential rain for about 2 days, and there are severe floods. The roads are impassable, bridges are down, and the town is completely cut off. And in the middle of the night, a body falls on the vet's jeep on a very remote road. It's been washed down a hill by the torrential rain. And the scene that I'm going to read from happens the following day when there is a brief break in the weather. So. A strange sheen glinted off the soaking heather. The light was eerie, almost falsely bright, as if someone had turned on a fluorescent lamp whose beam was directed on us, while black and purple clouds surrounded. The rocks glittered with the wet, and on the road I saw the fallen stones and soil that Malloy had mentioned. Maeve was lucky they hadn't fallen on her windscreen too. Some looked sharp enough to do some serious damage, although lucky was probably stretching it. The light darkened suddenly when we got out of the car, as if that same someone had turned off the electrics. It started to drizzle and we pulled up our hoods. I walked up the saturated road to where Maeve's jeep had been when we'd arrived last night. Derek followed me without a word. Everything had been removed now. The cordon, Maeve's jeep, the tarpaulin. You'd never have known that anything untoward had happened. I suppose there would be little to be gained by marking off the bog in torrential rain. At least Malloy had been able to carry out a short search while it was relatively dry this morning. Our gaze was drawn upwards to the sheep on the slopes, their wool sopping, their blue and red markings, the only bit of bright colour around. The hill was a burnt-looking, yellowy grey, patched with grey shale, as if from a quarry of cut stone. Whatever evidence the rain hadn't washed away, the sheep would soon trample, I thought. Derek stood in the middle of the road with his hands on his hips, adopting the same posture I'd seen outside Phyllis's shop. I wondered what it was he suffered from. It was the left leg that seemed to give him bother. So this is it, he said. This is where it happened? You're sure? I nodded and looked at the ground where I'd seen the tarp the night before. I was here, I said quietly. He turned, his head snapping around in my direction. You're here? But I thought the vet found him. She did, but I was here shortly afterwards. She's my friend, the vet. She called me. I hoped he'd leave it at that. I didn't want to have to field questions about my relationship with the guards. And he did. He fell silent again, the wind and rain battering at his hood. Then, without warning, he marched over to the edge of the road, where the land rose sharply, dotted with clumps of heather and glistening rocks, standing almost exactly on the spot where his brother's body had been lying under the tarp. But I chose not to tell him that. Instead, I pointed to the bank. I think he came from up there. The rain must have dislodged him and washed him down the hill. Derek sucked air through his teeth and winced as if he was struggling to keep his emotions in check. He'd been dead a little while when he fell, I think, I added gently. I wasn't sure if this would be any comfort, but part of me wanted to exonerate Maeve from any suspicion. Derek looked up to where I'd indicated, hands shielding his eyes. Without a word, he set off to climb the hill, his back rigid, legs striding on ahead, seemingly ignoring any pain. After a brief hesitation, I followed, screwing up my face to head into the rain. The ground was slippery and waterlogged, and there were muddy sections which were deeper than anticipated. But the mud was a better option than the rocks. The rocks were treacherous. More than once I came close to falling and sliding back down to the road. But I climbed after him, eventually resorting to hands and knees. The man was fit. I was quickly panting and out of breath. "What are you looking for?" I called. But he didn't answer me, just kept moving ahead, eventually doing what I did and using his hands to grab onto rocks to steady himself and haul himself up, glancing at the ground ever so often. Finally, he reached a large, even patch where the view was clear, and he stopped. I joined him a few seconds later and watched as he stood gazing down towards the sea, his hands on either side of his head. I noticed for the first time the muscles on his shoulders and back filling his Trans-Pyrenees Challenge 2015 jacket. Leanan Head was in the distance with houses dotted along the shore, but everything was cloaked in a grey mist and the turbulent sky looked ominous. What was he feeling, I wondered? Grief? Survivor's guilt? You'd imagine survivor's guilt must be severe with twins. That's the end of my reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea. I'm sorry your events got cancelled, but I'm really delighted to have you here this evening. Alex Hawley would like to know, what advantages does the weather provide as a plot device?
Well, each of my books has been set at a different season. So in Inishowen, the weather plays a large part in the way that the citizens live their lives. The wind is very severe. Usually the weather isn't great there. But with each book, I've written it set in a different season. So the book before this one was set at a heat wave during the summer, when nobody was able to handle the warmth, and they started to complain very quickly about how sunny it was. So yeah, the weather is a big device for me. Set in a peninsula in Ireland, the weather plays a large part, yeah.
Great, thank you very much for that. Okay, right, so Alex has already taken advantages of the Q&A button. You can too if you have any questions for our authors. But time to decide on our next reader. Oh, these are keen tonight. It's just fallen out all over my desk. How rude. Gareth Rubin is up next. Gareth Rubin writes for The Observer and Telegraph. His last novel, Liberation Square, is a thriller set in Soviet-occupied London and has just been listed for the CWA Historical Dagger. Ooh! His new book, The Winter Agent, is about British agents in Paris on the eve of D-Day. It is based on extraordinary true events. Gareth also worked as an actor, but his mother tells people he wasn't very good. So everybody, I hope he's a better author than he is actor. Gareth Rubin.
Hi, I am indeed Gareth Rubin, and yes, my mum tells people that I wasn't a very good actor. Not much I can do about it these days. So these days I just write books and hope that she likes them a little bit more than she used to like my acting. Oh well. So this is my new book. This is The Winter Agent. As was said, it's about British SOE agents in Paris just before D-Day in 1944. So my hero, this is pretty much from the beginning, my hero Mark Rees runs at the back, and he just had a bit of a run-in with an SS officer. Rees stamped his feet and turned a shop sign to closed before stepping into the back room. Dusty boxes of pencils and children's colouring books sat on the shelves, and at the rear, a narrow wooden staircase led to the attic above. He hauled himself up with the aid of a rope that served as a banister into the little room that was his bedroom. A radio, propped up on a stool, was playing folk songs about country lives, while, at a dressing table, squeezed under the eaves, a woman sat with her narrow back towards him, slowly brushing her dark hair. In a small, cracked mirror, he saw her lips making tiny movements, silently singing along. "You know the song," Rees said. She stopped, but didn't turn to him. "It's very old," she said, placing the hairbrush on the dressing table. Her voice was low, speaking to herself more than him. "My mother sang it. Sometimes she had friends over to play music." "Did you sing with her?" he asked. "Sometimes." "Your first public performances?" "Yes." Still she kept her back to him. He watched her lips and cheek moving in the mirror. "Tell me about the songs you wrote." She put her chin in her hands. There was something immensely sad about the action. Some of them were good, some were bad. Most of them were bad, I think. He sat on the bed. The mattress was made of horsehair, which made it rough to sleep on but warm in the winter. That's usually the way. She turned to face him and smoothed back her hair, to reveal a pale oval face with a slim, aquiline nose and dark hooded eyes. The top button of her blouse was open, over the top of a cotton cardigan. She reached for a wooden case, took out a thin cigarette and lit it, letting blue smoke curl up to the ceiling like a Chinese creature. Well, Maxime, she said. She put the case back on the table between her wireless transmitter and a .32 Colt, 1903 hammerless, the semi-automatic that Reese had taken when they left London, slipping it into a shoulder holster underneath his parachute suit. I want to kill 3 men I've seen in the last 10 minutes, he said. He glanced at the Colt. He could take it right then and go in search of the 2 in leather greatcoats who had dragged the girl into the car. He wanted to raise the gun and squeeze the trigger and see their lives ebb in the place of hers. He knew he couldn't. Times would change, but for now he had to remain in the city's formless background. He went half Paris. She turned back to the mirror and began dusting powder onto her skin. He lifted a novel from his bedside table, Proust's À la recherche des temps perdus, then went to his shaving kit and took out a phial of perfectly clear liquid, which he used to fill a pen. He noted down on one of the book's blank pages at the back the date, and then the rank and insignia and the Waffen SS uniform he had been given. The invisible ink made no mark on the page. It would require a reagent to do that. Reese flicked to the next pages and ran his finger down. It was the special section devoted to units heading to the Pas-de-Calais. He had been ordered to pay particular attention to any regiments posted there and to probe for any additional information that he could glean. The number of panzer divisions heading to that stretch of coastline indicated that the Allied invasion was expected there, and Reese knew how his superiors in London would pore over that information. He, the Wehrmacht, the French, everyone's tense, waiting for D-Day, believing it must come soon, desperate to know when and where. Time and again, Reese had calculated what he needed to prepare for it, for the time when he and the circuit would coordinate a resistance uprising, sabotage train and telephone lines, and ambush German troops on the roads. He needed more men. He needed more ammunition, more money, more chocolate and coffee to hand out as favours. He needed a lot. He shut the book. Can you close up the shop, he asked. All right, then what? Stay at your safe house this evening. She turned to face him. There was a shadow of dark rouge on the bones of her cheeks. Where are you going? To collect some photos from Luke? The raw weather dropped gravel into his voice, roughing it as if he had been drinking cheap spirits. Is it the SS document? He hesitated. I'll take it to London tomorrow. It must be urgent. He would have liked to tell her how important it was, that he had been ordered to drop everything else and take it himself to the Cabinet War Rooms beneath Whitehall, to place her photographs in the hands of his officer commanding. But even within the circuit, security had to be maintained. I'll be gone a week, he said. He should have been gone for longer, really. He needed a rest, but he was needed in Paris too. I'll see you when I get back. The tip of her cigarette glowed pale, threatening to fade into grey ash. Will you bring some coffee back? I would like some real coffee. It's been so long I can hardly remember it at all. You prefer it to roast acorns? I'll try Charlotte. Charlotte. It wasn't her real name, but it was the one he knew her by, her service name, the one by which she was known to other agents. Like Reese, she also had a series of covered identities with identification documents in those names. He pulled on woolen gloves. Be careful while I'm gone. Gestapo stepping up patrols. All right. Glance at the pistol beside the transmitter. Take the safety off. She stubbed a cigarette out in an empty ashtray, lifted the grey-handled gun, flicked down the safety lever, and replaced it softly on the table. And that's it.
Thank you, Gareth. We're just going to stay with you for a moment because I have got a bit of a cheeky question from myself.
Right.
Your mum hasn't said anything horrible about your writing, has she?
My mum likes this book. That's good news. I do like to make my mummy happy.
Yes, obviously, as we all do. That's a relief because I was gonna have to maybe argue with her, but that's cool. Thank you very much for reading. Okay, so our final reader for this part of the evening is, I hope you're all doing your drum rolls at home, by the way, Holly Watt. Now, Because I've got this on my device, I'm just going to show you this. Holly Watt is the author of To the Lions, winner of the CWA Ian Fleming Steel Dagger. Ooh! Holly spent almost 15 years working as an investigative journalist at the Sunday Times, the Telegraph and the Guardian. Her first novel, To the Lions, won the CWA Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award, deserves second woo, I think. Woo! And her second, The Deadline, was published in May and was the Times Thriller of the Month. Woo! Holly is currently working on her third novel in the Casey Benedict series while managing an 11-month-old baby. So everybody, I'm amazed she's here. Congratulations for that, Holly. Holly Watt.
Hello, can you hear me? Excellent. Yeah, no, I'm same as Andrea, and I haven't actually done a reading before with this book because everything's been cancelled. And so I've found a bit that I can read. But actually, I'm finding it really difficult to read it because my dialogue is hard for me to read. I've now got like a newfound respect for, well, even more respect for the Audible narrators because I just do such a brilliant job, and this is impossible to read. And also there's a word in it which I don't know how to pronounce. I meant to look it up beforehand, but I didn't. So it is this. If you can read that, can you read that? I don't know why I wrote it when I've never even heard of that word, but you know, there we go. Somehow it got in there. Okay. So this is from The Deadline, which came out last month. And yeah, so let's start. There are three journalists working together, Casey, Miranda and Hesse. They worked into the early evening, and finally Miranda looked at her watch. "I have to leave," she said, although she often worked until midnight, a modern Cinderella. "Go home," said Casey, "and you too, Hesse. I know you're on an early shift today." "A little bit longer. I've just got a couple more things to do." "Fine," Casey sighed. "I'll go and get us another coffee." "It's my turn," Hesse made to stand. "Sorry, I need the walk." "How's that project coming along?" Miranda asked as Casey packed up her bag. "Slowly," said Casey. "It's not the most exciting, to be honest. Keep plugging at it." "Course." Waving at the room, Miranda headed out. A few minutes later, Casey stood, stretched, and began to walk across the office. It was mostly empty now, the night news editor alone at his desk. The light on the coffee machine was flashing. Empty. Casey wandered through the doors, down the escalator, past the security barrier, out towards the coffee shop, those familiar steps day after day. But this time, a surprise. Cressida, standing in the bright lights of the foyer, hesitating in her high heels. The sleek fashion editor looked oddly unsure of herself, wavering to and fro. In one hand, she was clutching a carrier bag, black with long silk ribbons. When she saw Casey, she made as if to move towards the exit, heels clicking on the grey marble floor. "Cressida? Casey, you're here." Cressida's voice trailed away to a silence as she jerked to a halt. "What's the matter?" A hesitation, and then Cressida smoothed down her purple silk dress firmly. "You're going to think I'm an idiot." "I won't." "Promise?" "Yes." Cressida shoved her hand into the carrier bag. She scrabbled for a second and pulled out a tangle of material. It was a skirt, Casey saw, scarlet taffeta over layers of ivory tulle. Tulle, somebody helpfully is saying in the things. Ivory tulle. Fit for a fancy ballerina. "Here," Cressida held out the skirt awkwardly, as if she couldn't stand to touch it. Casey reached out. She could see something folded among the petticoats, a piece of white silk with a pattern of pale blue. It was only when Casey looked closely at the fabric that she saw the fabric was stitched with lines of words. "What? Just take it." Cressida almost threw the skirt at Casey and backed away. Her usual glamour cracked like a glass. The piece of silk was hard to read, some of the embroidery torn to meaningless threads. Casey peered at it and turned it sideways. She looked closer and held it up to the light. A jolt. "They take the girls." Casey bent closer, the entrance hall around her disappearing. She read it again. "They take..." Part of the embroidery was snarled on a layer of ballet girl tulle. Tulle. Slowly, Casey tried to pick it apart without tearing the material. "I've got to go." Casey realised Cressida was still standing there, uncertain. "I'm late and I've got a lot to... We can talk anyway. Tomorrow anyway." It was just there in the middle of the shop. Cressida sounded shocked. In part of Rapso's diffusion range, right in the middle of that big new shopping centre. I was looking through all the skirts. They've got some really lovely ones at the moment. And I picked up that skirt and it fell out. The piece of silk was stitched into the petticoats very loosely, said Cressida. You wouldn't have seen it unless I was checking the seams. I've been to hundreds of shops, Casey, thousands probably, tried on a million outfits. You never think, were there any other notes in any of the other clothes? I don't know, Cressida sounded hopeless. I didn't look. I didn't want to. I'll go and check, said Casey, now. Thank you for bringing me this, Cressida. I've got to go now, Cressida said more firmly, tugging her coat around her. Sure. They said an awkward goodbye. Casey watched Cressida disappear out through the doors before whirling back towards the escalator. Where's my coffee? Mock outrage from Hesse as Casey walked back into their office. Hesse, look at this. Casey gestured her over to her desk. Can you read this? Hesse leaned over. Just read it, said Casey. Hesse picked up the skirt and concentrated on it, her fingers careful, her face taut with concentration. The Rohingya, Hesse struggled with the blue embroidered letters. They're the refugees in Bangladesh. I don't understand. What do you think that bit there says? It's all tangled. I know. It doesn't make sense. Try. Hesse peered closer, and Casey saw her flinch. It says factory, Hesse's voice shook. It says they take them to a baby factory. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Holly. That was great. Alex Hawley would like to know how your journalism has impacted on your writing.
Oh, a lot. I mean, the main characters are investigative journalists. They do a lot of undercover work. They travel all over the world, which actually I was really lucky. That's what I did during my career, which was brilliant fun and great, and not like having an 11-month-old daughter.
Are you saying it's not fun? What?
Well, I mean, there's a lack of sleep.
And Brian Stewart would like to know, does your novel very accurately depict the work of an investigative journalist, or is there some dramatic license?
Well, I mean, there's quite strict rules that you'll follow as an investigative journalist, and sometimes I have to say my characters do slightly, go off piste. But I think there are quite a lot of similarities. There's quite a lot of my own personal experience in there of the actual technical side of doing undercover stuff. The one example I always use is if you're wearing a hidden camera, you can't move when somebody says something exciting, because if you move, your clothes rustle, and then all you hear is your clothes rustling, when actually you want to be hearing, somebody saying something interesting. So just lots of bits like that are in the books that people might not have thought about.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for joining us despite the baby. I can actually hear mine crying upstairs at the moment, so my husband's got the kids there. Oh, goodness me. Anyway, we are going to go to a break, but please, if you can, get your butler to bring you a drink, because there's a very lovely video about to be shown. Again, nothing to do with me. Thank you to the wonderful Simon. But after our break, we have Mason Cross, Emily Koch, M.W. Craven, Christie Newport, Daisy Waugh, Robin Morgan-Bentley, and Nina Manning. So please join us. Well, just continue to join us. The video is amazing. Thank you.
It's just a light where love is strong. Everywhere we wander, love will guide us home. You were born. It's just a light where love is strong. Everywhere fair and stranger always winds up home. Everywhere we wander, everywhere we wander, everywhere we wander. Love will guide us home.
Honestly, you keep saying thanks to Simon. It's all down to Simon. Don't say thanks to Vic and Simon. Had nothing to do with it. If you haven't already downloaded it, there's something. So cheeky. And thank you again to Simon for that brilliant video in addition to everything else. So our fourth reader of the evening is, give us a drum roll folks, Christie Newport. Christie Newport is new on the scene. If you haven't been to Newcastle Noir at the Bar, you might not have heard of her before, but I can guarantee you will be hearing of her in the next few years. And that's what Noir at the Bar is all about. We have established authors and emergence. So Christie J. Newport is a crime fiction author. She has completed her first novel, Whittingham. She might pronounce it Whittingham, but up in the northeast it's Whittingham, which is currently undergoing its final edit by the wonderful Ian Skewis. She has been finalised by the Right Now Festival and will have a short story featured in their anthology via The Word. Ooh! Tonight, Christie will be reading from her current work in progress, The Solomon Killer. Everybody, you saw her here first, Christie J. Newport.
Hi, can you hear me? Right, okay, I'll dive straight in then. So here goes. I don't think it needs any explanation because it's from chapter 1. Millie drove her detective's issue black Ford Astra like a lunatic. Her phone was on speaker, her mum sobbing resonating around the car. She swung into Rollins Drive just in time to see 2 police constables step out of their squad vehicle. Bumping the curb slightly, she almost took out a couple of dithering onlookers. Millie shoved on the handbrake and jumped out, kicking the door closed with her heel. The PCs looked back sharply. She pulled them up short with a flash of her ID. DS Millicent Woods. She rushed through the small gathering straight up to the white front door of her friend's home. The male PC looked her up and down. His eyes twinkled his approval as he took in Millie's golden skin, her dark, soulful eyes. Her colouring, an inheritance from her mother that during her school years had made her a target for bullies. Now, she wore those battle scars with pride, a testament to her strength and resilience. The female PC stepped aside, allowing Millie to lead the way. Taking a deep breath, she pushed and walked inside. Dorothy Blackledge sat on the couch, shielding 6-year-old Violet Wilkes, her grandmotherly presence doing nothing to allay the fear in the child's eyes, which were wide and glaring. Violet wasn't crying. Her body was unnaturally still. The room was destroyed, the cream armchair laid on its back. Who bought cream furniture when they had a 7 and 6-year-old? Oh, Millie! Dorothy spotted her, tears trickling down her wrinkled cheeks. She squeezed Violet closer, huddling her into her chest. Millie rushed forward, kneeling in front of them. She momentarily blocked out the rest of the room, ignoring the PC's voice echoing from the kitchen as he called it in. Millie placed her hand over Dorothy's, which held the top of Violet's arm. What happened? Mum called me. Millie's mum and Dot had been neighbours since Millie was a toddler. She was as good as family. My David, he said Violet here. She was distressed. Well, he didn't say Violet. He just said the kids, or one of the kids. I can't remember, love, it all. It's okay. Don't worry about that right now. Well, he looked through the back window into the kitchen and it was a state. He could hear this little one crying. I came straight round, of course. The second she saw us, she stopped. She hasn't cried or said a word since, nothing. Millie reached out, gently pushing a few strands of Violet's light brown hair behind her ear. She was a dainty little thing. Violet, sweetheart, do you know where Mummy, Daddy and Tessa are? Can you tell me what happened? Millie hated asking. Conjuring up memories of whatever led to this would be tough. Violet's huge brown eyes stared through her. She may as well have been invisible. There was no reaction. I'll be right back, okay? Dot nodded. Violet remained trance-like. Millie wandered through the magnolia room adorned with canvases of wild animals and family pictures. She glanced around, her stomach lurching as she noticed what she hadn't before, the flickering flame of a pillar candle. Oh God. Millie swallowed past the fast-forming lump in her throat and opened the kitchen door, afraid of seeing what she expected. It was all there. The lightwood table had 2 mugs sideways on, their contents pulled. The kettle was upturned, drawers open, cutlery spilled onto the tiled floor, but not random. Arranged. It was all arranged, just as she'd seen before. Millie struggled to fight her rising panic. You haven't touched anything. She looked to an ashen-faced 20-something PC. He shook his head vigorously, his foot nudging a fork on the floor. He almost jumped out of his skin. Shit, sorry, Careful, Millie snapped. She saw his face drop and caught herself. It's okay, just watch where you step. We have to preserve the scene. I need you outside making sure no one comes in. The team will be here soon. Go to your squad car, get the gear. It's a crime scene, we need to seal it off. The kid? His eyes implored his care. What? She'll be examined for trace, then taken to be checked over. We'll look for someone to look. She's okay. She's here, she's alive, she's safe. Millie instructed his slightly younger female colleague to guard the back door. She looked grateful to exit the house. There was an unnatural sense of despair inside that felt contagious. Millie guided the male officer to the front door, worried he might drag the evidence about with his clumsy feet. Arriving began in her stomach, a fog in her brain, dread erupted. She recognised the scene she'd been studying from afar, his work, his evil. She knew it. Millie sensed it. Now she had to convince her boss. Her friend was in the grasp of the Sullivan killer, and he had no mercy. And then I'm just going to jump ahead slightly to where her friend is right now. Lila was tied to a chair in a cavernous room shrouded in darkness. The cloying smell of stagnant water and urine crept up her nostrils. The skittering of rodents made her want to scream. The thought that Tessa was somewhere like this had terror lipping a serpent's tongue up and down her skin. She tried to call out, to yell, to say anything, but material filled her mouth, choking her. Its roughness lodged at the top of her throat, forcing her mouth wide around it, the back of her tongue rising to press it into the roof of her mouth. A gag was tied tightly around the base of her skull, locking the material in place, trapping it. She couldn't utter a sound. Her eyes darted unseeing. Wherever he'd taken her, it was so cold, ice threaded her veins. Her skin littered with goosebumps. Scuttling insect feet ran the length of her arm. Terror gripped her. She tried to move, but the chair was fused in pace. She was powerless. The sound of him clearing her throat, his throat somewhere ahead, made her start. She couldn't see him. She could only hear. The deep growl resonated around the space, echoing. You know why they call me the Sullivan killer? She wanted to rip through the binds, to pierce the walls with her voice. She wanted to tear her nails down his skin, to rip him apart. She was forced to remain, to listen. His laugh was mirthless. I'm not remotely religious. He said it like it was a joke. She felt sick. A sudden surge of bile rose and she gurgled as it soaked into the material. She struggled to breathe, gasping a watery, vomit-drenched, paltry amount of air. King Solomon of Israel, I mean, come on. His laugh erupted, making her tears want to bleed. He made a judgment when two women went to him, both saying the same baby was theirs. You see, one of them died in the night. The one with the dead sprog swapped it. She hated that he had his audience, that she had no choice but to enjoy his theatre. She'd read the news. She knew about the Sullivan killer. Her worst nightmare was realised the moment he told her who he was. She knew then she was already dead. The alternative was unimaginable because that would mean Tessa. You know how we figured out who the real mother was? What, not even a guess? His laugh, sarcastic, sickening. He offered to cut it in half. One was going to let him and the other would rather the fake mother have it. Well, then he knew, didn't he? The baby lived and the rightful mother got a kid back. Now I ain't that generous. Not everyone gets to live when I rule. That's the fucking point. His voice was laced with menace. It dripped hate. How could the morons get it so wrong? I'm not like fucking Solomon. It's going to be you or her. That's it. One lives, one dies. He laughed harder. Or maybe both die. But someone's going to die, I can promise you that. And the kicker is, it ain't going to be you who gets to choose. It'll be his choice. Lila felt the spread of hot urine. She tried to lunge against her binds. She barely moved an inch. The rope bit angrily into her ankles, rubbing the skin away. Raw agony tore through her. She hadn't seen his face. He'd hidden behind a mask. At the sight of an intruder in her home, she'd been shocked, scared. She'd imagined a burglary or her past catching up with her. But the Sullivan killer, she could never have conjured up such unfathomable horror. Tears coursed down her cheeks, soaking into the gag. His voice quieted. His laugh evaporated. Then she heard the unmistakable squelch of footsteps on sodden ground moving nearer. And that's it.
Thank you so much for that, Christie. You saw here first. So who's next? Okie dokie. I missed the drum rolls from the bar, I've got to be honest. I'm thinking about getting my husband a drum kit or something, just so we can sit there and give it a bit of that. Next up is M.W. Craven. I've been trying to get M.W. Craven to read it in Noir at the Bar for literally 4 years now, so tonight is like super thrilling for me. M.W. Craven was born in Carlisle but grew up in Newcastle. He joined the army at 16, leaving 10 years later to complete a social work degree. 17 years after taking up a probation officer role in Cumbria at the rank of Assistant Chief Officer, he became a full-time author. The Puppet Show, the first in a 2-book deal he signed with Little Brown in 2017, was released in hardback in June 2018 and went on to win the Crime Writers Association Gold Dagger. Ooh! Black Summer, the second in the series, has just been longlisted for the Gold Dagger. Ooh! And book number 3, The Curator, was released last week. So everybody, without further ado, the lovely M.W. Craven.
Hi guys. As Vic said, this was out last Thursday. We had a different launch as than as usual. We did it on Facebook, which was surprisingly successful. We had 2,000 people viewing, and I thought because the book has just been released, I would read something that you can't get yet. So I'm going to read the first chapter from the 4th book, which is out next June. So don't shout at me. Although I notice nobody has seen it yet, but I notice it's already got a review on Goodreads. So go figure. So this is the opening chapter. The man wearing a Sean Connery mask said to the man wearing a Daniel Craig mask, "Bertrand the monkey and Rattan the cat are sitting by the fire, watching chestnuts roast in the hearth," which was as good a way as any of getting someone's attention. "Okay," Daniel Craig said. The men wearing George Lazenby and Timothy Dalton stopped what they were doing to listen. Pierce Brosnan, with his headphones on and his laptop spitting out complex instructions, was oblivious to everything but the vault door and the Diebold 3-keyed timer and combination lock in front of him. Roger Moore was outside in the van. "Bertrand tries pushing the coals aside, but he's scared of burning his hand," Sean Connery continued. "But he wants those chestnuts, and he doesn't want to wait for the fire to cool. Instead, he persuades Rattan to scoop them out, promising him an equal share." "And the cat does?" "He does, yes. Rattan moves the red-hot coals and picks out the chestnuts one by one, and each time he does, Bertrand gobbles them up. Eventually, a maid disturbs them, and they have to flee. Rattan gets nothing for his pains." Timothy Dalton was Sean Connery's man, but the rest were Daniel Craig's. George Lazenby was his muscle, Pierce Brosnan was his technical guy, and Roger Moore was his wheelman. As crew leader, Daniel Craig felt he should be the one to ask the obvious question. "Why are you telling us this?" he said. "No reason," Sean Connery said. "It's a fable adapted by the French poet Jean de La Fontaine. It's called Le Songe et le Chat, and it's about people sacrificing others for their own ends. The saying cat's paw comes from it." "It's an idiom, actually," Timothy Dalton said, "not a saying." Sean Connery turned and glared at him. The mood in the vault's anteroom changed. It had been tense. Now there was an undercurrent of menace. "What part of you do not speak ever, didn't you understand?" he said, his voice low. Under his mask, they sensed Timothy Dalton blanch. Daniel Craig glanced at the bonds in his crew and shrugged. Sean Connery was paying, and he paid well. If he wanted to talk about monkeys and cats and chestnuts and humiliate his own man, then who were they to stop him? The anteroom descended into silence. Pierce Brosnan broke it. "We're in," he said. Few banks offer a safety deposit box service these days. The vault that the bonds had broken into was one of several purpose-built facilities belonging to a specialist provider. It had cutting-edge security, but a combination of off-site hacks and Pierce Brosnan's on-site safe-cracking skills had rendered them redundant, at least until the backup systems kicked in. "How long?" Sean Connery said. "We've had 18 minutes, 20 seconds, Daniel Craig replied. He glanced at the watch on the inside of his wrist. They still had plenty of time. The vault was rectangular, 15 feet by 30, and had a low ceiling. It was lit by neon lights. A steel table was fixed to the wall opposite the door. Safety deposit boxes stretched from floor to ceiling on the 2 longer walls. The boxes were suitcase-sized at the bottom and got progressively smaller as they reached eye level and above. The CCTV cameras were working. but had been fixed so they were on a 60-minute delay. The staff monitoring the vault would see what they were doing, but not for another hour. "We'll start here," Timothy Dalton said. Sean Connery had hired him to evaluate the box's contents, and he was keen to contribute. So far, he'd been a passenger. He made a move to one of the larger boxes. "Not that one," Sean Connery said, removing a piece of paper from his pocket. He read out a serial number, 9-206. The Bond spread out and searched for the box. George Lazenby found it. It was at head height and was one of the smaller boxes. "Mr. Brosnan, if you will," Daniel Craig said. Pierce Brosnan studied the lock. The vault's door had been a challenge, but as no one should be in the vault unsupervised, the security on the boxes was perfunctory. Little more than cylinder locks. He pulled a snapper bar from his bag, a locksmith tool especially designed to break and open cylinder locks. It took less than a minute. He put the snapper bar back in his bag and stepped away. Sean Connery opened the small door. The safety deposit box was empty, as he'd been told it would. Under his mask, he smiled. "Never mind," Dalton said. "We have hundreds more to check." "Actually," Sean Connery said, "we're not here to make a withdrawal." "We're not. Well, what are we doing?" "We're making a deposit." Sean Connery pulled a snub-nosed revolver from his waistband, pressed it against the back of Timothy Dalton's head and pulled the trigger. He was dead before he hit the polished floor. A cloud of pink mist hung in the air where his head had just been. The vault smelled of cordite and blood. And fear. "What the hell?" Daniel Craig snapped. "No guns," I said. "We don't carry guns on jobs." "You know what's always bothered me about that fable?" Sean Connery said. He held the gun by his side, but it was clear he'd use it again if he had to. "Enlighten me," Daniel Craig said, tearing his eyes from the twitching corpse. There was no mention of what happened next. No mention of what Rat on the Cat did to Bertrand the monkey after his betrayal. Daniel Craig looked at the corpse again. It had stopped moving. This man betrayed someone. Betrayal was a legitimate motive in the circles he moved in. Sean Connery said nothing. "Dalton was a shit Bond anyway," Daniel Craig said, looking at his watch. "Are we done?" "Almost," Sean Connery said. He removed something from his pocket and placed it on the lip of the empty safety deposit box. He spent some time making sure it was in the right position. "Now we're done." And with that, the Bonds left. 30 minutes later, alerted to a robbery in progress by the security company monitoring the vault's CCTV, the first police officers arrived. All they found was a corpse cooling on the floor and a ceramic rat looking over it. Done.
Thank you very much, Mike. Betty Baskerville would like to know, is Tilly inspired by anyone?
She's a combination of people. And she's also out of necessity. When my agent asked me to write a new series from scratch, I had to sort of write the opposite sidekick to what I had my first series. So it was an ex-para psychotic. So I sort of went the opposite, and it sort of morphed from there. But yeah, there's a few characteristics which I've stolen from people.
I think you're in the running for Court of the Night so far with Roger Moore was in the van, or Dalton was a ship Bond anyway. So with that in mind, Alex Hawley would like to know, if it's not a plot spoiler, why Bond?
It was because I see things very visually. I thought it would be quite a dramatic opening, and it sort of plays a key scene. Because the next scene in the book is Poe and Tilly are in court fighting his eviction from his croft. And then the heist isn't mentioned again until about 2/3 of the way through the book, but it is a very, very important part of the book. But it was just the visuals that I liked, with the people in the robbers in the James Bond mask, and also it's a sort of literary device, because therefore I don't have to say who's under the masks at this point. Yeah. So there's still some things to discover, I suppose.
Great. Danny Marshall would like to know, what made you kill the best Bond?
Yeah, that's so weird. There's a well, I think it's a humorous bit. I don't think he's going to agree, because they work with in this book they work with the FBI agent who makes an appearance in the Curator.
Yeah.
And when they're being told about the thing, that Timothy Dalton was killed, she goes, "Damn, Dalton was my favorite Bond." And Poe looks at it and goes, "Weirdo." So, I mean, he's not everyone's first choice, obvious choice for a favourite Bond, but anyway, you have to kill someone. I had to kill someone, so he was. It was an interim one. It was a placeholder at best, wasn't it?
Louise Fairbairn has given some love to your lampshade.
All right.
And Kerry Newport would like to know, do you see yourself in Poe?
It's my agent says that the flute character is who I am, and the Poe character is who I would like to be. So there's probably a little bit of that. I mean, he's far, well, actually, he's not more sarky than me, but he's far more intelligent than me, and he eats a lot more meat and sausages than me. I don't think my digestive system could handle his diet, to be honest.
And finally, a cheeky question that we had on Twitter earlier from Chris MacDonald.
No, you can't.
Right, there we go. Answer.
You'll get an advance copy when they're ready, but that's not going to be for months yet. It's certainly not going to be this year.
So how's the review on Goodreads? Just asking. Did you put it up there?
No, it's 4 out of 5 stars. It's a rating rather than a review. So it's one of those bizarre things that's because they certainly haven't read it. There's only my agent and my editors have read it so far. So
well, maybe it's one of them under a pseudonym.
Maybe. I did have a 1-star review for The Creator, which went on this week, which was, I absolutely love this author, but I'm not paying £9.99 for a Kindle. 1 star. So thanks, whoever that was.
That'll be making it under the Blood Brothers 1-star review. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Mike. It was totally worth the 4-year wait. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we have 2 more readers during this part of the show. And we have... just ripped it. Daisy Waugh. So sorry. I don't know if it's Daisy Waugh or Daisy Waugh, because I know people who spell their name like that and both pronunciations. So I'm sure Daisy will put me right in just a second. Daisy is an author, journalist, columnist, and tarot reader. She has written a couple of non-fiction books, 14 novels, among them chick lit and historical fiction. As Evie Hart, she wrote 2 detective novels starring a tarot reader called Dolly. I love the Dolly Green books, just saying. As Daisy Waugh, she has just delivered the 2nd in a new series of comic detective stories in which no murderers ever get caught. The first in the series, In the Crypt with a Candlestick, was released in February this year. It's longlisted for the comedy Women in Print, ooh, and the 2nd in the series, Phone for the Fish Knives, is due to be published in May 2021. So everybody, please give a huge round of applause for Daisy.
Sorry, beginner's error. I forgot to unmute myself. If you can hear me now. Hello, I'm Daisy, and this is my book, and it's called In the Crypt with a Candlestick, and it's about, it's basically supposed to be funny, you know, it's about very grand people in a very grand house in Yorkshire killing each other. Okay, chapter 1, The Toads of Toad Hall. Lady Toad stood by the great north door of her important house, a vision of slimness and grief as she watched her husband take leave of the building for the last time. It was raining. By the way, it's Daisy Waugh. It was raining, as it always was, and Sir Egbert was dead. At the far end of the park, its huge high dome obscured by mist, the Toad family mausoleum stood waiting, as it always had, to swallow his grim remains. The mausoleum had been swallowing dead Sir Egbert's for 10 generations already, and had been waiting to swallow this one since the day of his birth, 93 years ago, which fact seemed, at his extended deathbed, to be a source of great comfort to him. Long after he could no longer recognise his wife or go to the lavatory unaided, he remained coherent and agitated about his final resting place. Was it ready for him? Had everyone understood which shelf he wanted? He didn't want to be anywhere near his great uncle, a homosexualist, nor, God forbid, anywhere near the American. Had they moved the park? Had they mowed the path across the park for the hearse? Would they remember to remove the cows from the field along the route? He didn't want the hearse getting butted by the bullocks. Over and over again, Lady Toad had to promise him that all was in order. Yes, my Eggy Peggy, she had to say, we know which shelf you want. Everything is ready. You mustn't worry. But he could never hear it enough. It was as if the mausoleum's mere presence, still standing where his ancestors had plopped it all those years ago, was proof that he had done his bit. The Toad mausoleum still belonged to the Toads. He could rest in peace. It was in lousy shape, mind you. Non-family members had to wear hard hats and sign waiver forms before they were allowed anywhere near it. There were cracks in the walls and missing tiles on the roof, and dry rot and damp rot, and in one of the 4 underground chambers, each with 20 or more shelves, a disgusting infestation of termites. There were stones that had come loose, and crypt fronts that had come off, and everywhere signs warning tourists to keep out. Not to mention the addition in 1995 of a Missouri millionaire, the American, who'd paid the Toad Hall estate £35,000 for permission to rest his plebeian bones in an empty crypt beside Sir Egbert's great-great-great-great-grandfather. But no matter what state it was in or whose bones rested inside, there was no denying the Toad mausoleum was something to behold. It was vast, it was preposterous, a building of such staggering importance and beauty that students of architecture came to admire it from all around the world. The name Toad meant death in German. As the late Sir Egbert often liked to remind his guests, it was his single joke. "Welcome to Death Hall," he would say. Perhaps this is why the Toads of Toad Hall invested so much in the family tomb. Maybe they'd always had an unhealthy preoccupation with the end. In any case, Lady Toad could hardly bring herself to look at the wretched thing. She'd hated it from the day she mistakenly became Sir Egbert's bride 54 years ago, when, stepping out of the private chapel from which Sir Egbert's coffin was just now being removed, she had happened to glance at the mausoleum, its magnificent dome looming through the mist and the rain, and realised that unless she did something radical and very brave, which was unlikely, the bloody thing would be looming at her until the day it was her turn to be slipped onto one of its shelves. All things being equal, that wouldn't be for a while yet. Emma Toad was 21 years younger than the husband she was burying today, still fit and fragrant and very much alive, and after 54 years of dutiful wifedom, longing to hand responsibility for the estate to the next generation and spend more time at her lovely villa in Capri. There were only 3 clouds on the horizon: Nicola, Egbert and Esme, none of whom was prepared for the duties that lay ahead. It was too bad, because somebody had to do it. Lady Toad had served her time. She had waited long enough. There was going to be an almighty row after the wake. That's it.
Thank you so much, Daisy. That was great. Daisy Waugh, everyone, if I know how to pronounce her name.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Doesn't really matter at all, does it?
Thank you. Okay, so we've got one more reader before we go to our next break. I don't think I'll ever be able to get over this fringe. The shame. I miss my hairdresser. Anyway, Rubin Morgan-Bentley. So, let's have a look. Rubin Morgan-Bentley's day job for the past 6 years has been at Audible, where he's worked with lots of authors and narrators on audiobooks. Chatting with thriller writers such as Fiona Barton and Paula Hawkins over the years inspired him to try writing a thriller himself. And his debut psychological thriller, I've just hit myself in the face. I haven't even had a drink tonight. That is ridiculous. The Wreckage came out in February this year. He is currently working on his second thriller, The Other Parents. Rubin lives in London with his husband and his newborn son, Solly. So apologies if you hear Solly gurgling in the background. I think you'll be forgiven, Rubin. So everybody, Rubin Morgan-Bentley.
Hi everyone. Sorry on behalf of my book for hitting you in the face, Vic. Okay, so this is, I haven't done many readings, and this is the first time I've done a virtual reading, so I'm excited to be here. I'm going to read 2 very short chapters. If you're somebody that likes books with short chapters, then The Wreckage is a good one for you. Starting with the very, very first chapter, I want you to imagine a normal day on your way to work. You're driving to work and it's pouring with rain. Then it's the windscreen wipers first, shards of rubber and plastic going back and forth, frantically scrambling to clear my way. There's no road in front of me, just flashes of grey and wet. And then the sounds, the low, dull whir of my engine, punctuated by the zip of other cars, more eager, more urgent, overtaking me on my right. The sharp, sudden whip of thunder cracked onto the roof of my car, causing me to jump each time, my legs shaking in anticipation of the next strike. And then the morning mist. The dial on the heater is broken, so I lean forwards and rub the windscreen clear with the edge of my sleeve. I notice a milk stain on my left cuff, the remnant of a rushed breakfast. The wipers, the zip, the thunder, the mist, the dial, the stain, always in that order. And then there it is, the flash of white. One glimpse, one frame, then chaos. A cacophony that I remember and describe differently every time. A thump on impact, a smash of the head, a screech as I hit the brakes and swerve to the side. If the sequence of visuals is set, the sounds are on shuffle. What came first, the screech or the smash? After the other sounds, other sensations, ears popping, stomach dropping, a warm central urge in my groin. And then the smells, the whiff of burnt rubber, and that sweet, warm scent of rain, trickling in through the broken windscreen. And just one taste, the metallic tang of blood. I switch off the engine, unbuckle my seatbelt, lean forwards and run my finger across a crack in the windscreen. I shuffle across, open the passenger door and climb out. The roar of the traffic drowns the ringing in my ears, and it's pouring, that uniquely British brand of rain that cuts across diagonally and feels much heavier than it looks. I walk behind my car to the edge of the hard shoulder. I see that people are stopping now, so maybe one of them can help me get back onto the road. It's still dark, but the lights of the gathering cars shine around me, from the road to the hard shoulder, and onto the verge to my left. That's where they all seem to be going. That's where there's a commotion. Another clash of thunder, and as I jolt forwards, my stomach drops and I vomit onto the tarmac. I've just seen the white again. A pair of white cotton trousers, stained with mud at the hems, lying on the verge. There's a man on the side of the road. He's there because I hit him with my car. There are a good few seconds that go missing here. When I return, I'm walking down the hard shoulder, facing the rush of traffic. My legs feel numb, like pins and needles, but colder, even more detached. I'm stumbling towards a flashing blue and red light, where I can see a police officer. As I approach him, my legs return, but I feel a strange pull in my upper body now, as if a force quite separate from my realm of control has taken over. By the time I reach the officer, I'm drenched, shivering through sodden clothes, my hair plastered across my forehead. "I'm sorry," I yell, my arms raised high above my head. "I'm sorry." Okay, so now we're going to skip forward just a couple of chapters to hear from the other perspective, which is Alice, the woman, the wife of the man that has been run over by Ben. So he doesn't die at the scene, but he's in hospital. And Ben decides to pay them a visit. I'm going to read this terribly, but if you're a fan of audiobooks, Amelia Fox does the Alice chapters, so she'll do a much better job than me. Alice, Tuesday, 23rd of January. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not disturbing. I really hope you don't mind my coming to visit. A man's just walked into our room with a bunch of roses, and I don't recognise him at all. I'm sorry, are you? There are other people on the same wing of this hospital, with a different visitor every day. A never-ending ebb and flow of friends, relatives and colleagues, with hand-tied carnations and lilies, magazines and crossword books. They come partly through duty, of course, but also, I think, to satisfy a need to signal their virtue. I have such a busy schedule, but of course I can spare an hour to visit my poor friend, who I hadn't called for 6 months before we ended up here. I can probably count on one hand the number of people who would even care that Adam was in this state. Adam's dad, Roger, lives in Marbella with his new family, and I can't get hold of him. There are no relatives calling to ask for an update, no old school friends coming around to see how he's doing. So a visitor, this is new. I wait for him to introduce himself, but instead he just stands there, pale and stiff, staring at Adam's face. I'm sorry, I say, I don't quite remember meeting you before. How do you know Adam? I don't, I never met your husband, but Mrs. Selby, I'm so sorry. I was the one who ran him over. It takes me a second to process this. Sorry, what? What the hell is he doing here? What a funny thing to do, to take responsibility for someone else's attempt at suicide. He must be even more fucked up than Adam. How did he even know where we were? And his name? Where did he get Adam's name? I hit the roof. That's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for that, Robin. And we have a question from Alex. He'd like to know if you have a favourite interview from Audible.
Oh, Alex, I recognise your name from Twitter, and I know you're a big audiobook fan. That is a sneaky question.
Are you allowed to have favourites?
I'm a big fan of Ian McEwan, and I got to interview him right at the beginning of when I started doing the interviews, and he brought up Nutshell, if you remember that, which is the weird book where the voice is a fetus. And I was like super starstruck and prepared way too long. I like reread all his books, and I think it went all right, but I was probably quite sweaty and embarrassed myself on the day.
Excellent, thank you. Just as a little teaser for everybody for next week, we have somebody joining us next week who might very well leave me a little bit fangirly and sweaty. So if you have any tips, Robin, I would be really thrilled to take them from you so I don't embarrass myself next Wednesday.
Wine?
What, wine? Okay.
Also, wine can help with nerves, yeah, you know.
Great. I mean, if I can hit myself in the face with a hardback with only soft tea, I don't know if wine's a good idea, but you know, I'll definitely give it a go. Thank you. Okay, folks. We are going to another break where we have some very special readings for you. So you're not only just getting 10 readings tonight, you're also getting some more during the break. Noir from the Bar. Have you seen it yet? Is currently number 19 in Amazon crime and thriller short stories. We are ahead of, I think, Karen Slaughter, but below Stephen King. So can we, a little bit, please? Simon will be putting stuff into a web page tomorrow. For those of you who are asking if they can see the video again, the follow-up video might be coming. You'll have to check your emails when you get your emails this week from VNatB. Quote of the week, currently Mike Craven is unrivaled. Will he be rivaled in the last part? Still to come, we have Mason Cross, Emily Koch and Nina Manning. So please join us after the break once you've topped up your glasses. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rod Glenn, and this is an extract from Still Life by Margaret Kirk. He's almost home when he finds her. A dark smudge against the horizon. That's all he can make out at first. A seal, he thinks, sunning itself on the shoreline while the rest of its pod basks nearby. Good tourist brochure stuff. Something to see him through the lean times until the gallery reopens. He walks on to get a closer look, pulls out his phone for a couple of snaps he can work from later, and feels it slip from his fingers when he realizes what he's seeing. The woman's body is lying on the beach, not down amongst the dunes or hidden by the marram grass. She's out there in plain sight, sprawled, unmoving across the rock the locals call P.D. Selkie. If you'd like to read more of Still Life and 29 other stories from some of the best crime and mystery authors writing today, you can buy Noir from the Bar on Amazon. All profits go to NHS Charities. Thank you.
Are the rest of the team meeting us here? He asked, though Simon offered no answer. In the distance, John saw a circular section of forest, separated from the rest by a chain-link fence. As they descended the hill towards it, John fought the urge to throw up. He'd heard rumours, but had always dismissed them as an urban legend, too unbelievable to be real. 5 minutes later, they stopped beside the fence. "We're here," said Simon. The cheeriness in his voice was disconcerting. He opened the door but didn't get out. John didn't follow suit. "What's happening?" John asked. "What's happening?" Simon repeated. Confusion flashed on his face. "This is the retreat. It's time to leave New York behind and get back to nature. This place... Great, isn't it? It's been in the family for generations." John stared at him. "Grab your bag from the back seat and I'll get mine." Simon pushed himself out of the truck and John obeyed his orders. They grabbed their bags and walked up to the gate. Simon punched another passcode in and the gate unlocked. "After you," he said, and against his better judgment, John entered the fenced-off area of forest.
I'm John Sweeney and I'm reading from Ice, a Tom Novak short story by Neil Lancaster, one of the stories in the NHS Charities fundraiser, Noir from the Bar. Cheers. A new, powerful and instantly addictive methamphetamine is about to hit the streets of the UK. It had crept up on her, slowly at first, ever since she first tried it in the bar a few weeks ago. A good-looking guy, Leon, had given it to her, promising the best night ever. He'd said it was the best ever. A brand new strain, pure as the driven snow, straight from Mexico, and guaranteed not to be cut with any old shit, like much of the dance drugs were. At first, it had been fun. An intensive rush like nothing she'd ever known before that took her as soon as she smoked it in the dingy toilets at the illegal rave that had sprung up at a dusty old warehouse in Tottenham. It felt so amazing, just so euphoric. She'd danced for hours and hadn't wanted to sleep whatsoever, whilst the laser-like focus totally consumed her, making her feel at one with the banging, hypnotic, repetitive dance beats. In that moment, she was at one with the other 1,000 or so revellers on the vast, grimy dance floor. To read more of Neil Lancaster's short, Ice, and 29 more crime and mystery shorts donated by some of the best crime and mystery writers around, purchase your copy of Noir from the Bar. All profits of the book go to support NHS Charities.
Hello there, I'm Mark Wingett and I am reading a snippet from Robert Spragg's short, Pancake Day, one of 30 stories donated by some of the very best crime and mystery writers around to Noir from the Bar. Standing here now with my hand on the door, I am making the biggest bet of my life. There are other ways out, of course. There always are. Family to fall back on, friends to confide in. Bearing your dirty secrets for others to turn their noses up at isn't my style, though. I twist a handle and my tongue sticks to the roof of my dry mouth like Velcro. My stomach does an acrobatic routine that would have an Olympic judge rummaging around for his perfect 10. There's no going back once I'm through the door. I tell myself this, pretending like I still have a choice. knowing that I'll never take it. Only a fool would contemplate something this stupid. And let's be honest, as a long-standing member of the police force, I really should know better. To read more, you can buy Noir from the Bar from Amazon. It's $2.99 on Kindle, £10 in paperback, and all profits going to NHS Charities. Thank you much.
How about that? If you'd said to me when I was a kid that a guy from the Bill would be reading from something that I was involved in, I'd be absolutely buzzing. Anyway, it's still available. We have 3 more readers. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. Emily Koch. Okay. Emily Koch's debut novel, If I Die Before I Wake, was shortlisted for the Crime Writers Association Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award. Woo! And selected as Waterston's Thriller of the Month. Woo! Her second novel, Keep Him Close, came out just before lockdown. Waterstons have said it cements Koch's place as one of the most exciting new crime writers of our day. The Kindle version is currently 99p on Amazon. So everybody, please welcome Emily Koch.
Hello, good evening, and thanks everyone for coming along. It's really fun to be involved. There's been some great readings already. So yeah, thank you for having me. So yeah, this is my second novel, Keep Him Close. It's a dark domestic drama about the uneasy friendship that forms between a woman whose son has died and the mother of the boy accused of his murder. So I'll just read you a bit of the blurb from inside the cover. Alice's son is dead. Indigo's son is accused of murder. Indigo is determined to prove her beloved Cain is innocent. Searching for evidence, she is helped by a kind stranger who takes an interest in her situation. Little does she know that her new friend has her own agenda. Alice can't tell Indigo who she really is. She wants to understand why her son was killed, and she needs to make sure that Indigo's efforts to free Cain don't put her remaining family at risk. But how long will it take for Indigo to discover her identity, and what other secrets will come out as she digs deeper? No one knows a son like his mother, but neither Alice nor Indigo know the whole truth about their boys and what happened between them that fateful night. Okay, and I'm going to read to you from one of the early chapters. This is one of Indigo's chapters, so she's one of the mothers in this story. And yeah, her teenage son is called Cain. And I think the only other thing that you need to know for it to make sense is that he's due to go off to university. I woke early with the bright morning light peeking through my bedroom curtains, but went straight back to sleep. There have been so many beautiful sunny days recently that I don't feel the need to spring out from under the duvet and make the most of it like I usually do. But after some sunbathed snoozing, it's now past 10 o'clock and I need a cup of tea. I drag myself out of bed, patting a hand across the bedside table for my glasses and pad downstairs in my slippers. I collect the Sunday paper from the doorstep and wave at Paul from number 13, who's pruning the climbing rose that trails around the top of his front door. Another hot one, he says. The allotment's gasping for some water. Cain and I are planning a little rain dance this evening if you and Helen want to join. Paul laughs. What would you do if I said yes? I don't know what makes you think I'm joking. I grin. Our cat, Lucian, sprints in past my feet as I close the front door and I follow him into the kitchen. Cain is already up, unusual for a morning after a night out, and he's sitting with his back to me at the breakfast bar. I'm going to miss this sight. It's always nice to walk into a room and find someone there. Morning, love. I yawn, stepping over Lucian as he stretches out in a sunny spot on the terracotta floor tiles. Want a cuppa? I pat Kane on the back as I pass him on my way to the kettle. He doesn't answer. After I fill the kettle and flick it on, I turn round. Love? What am I seeing here? I push my glasses up the bridge of my nose. Your face, Kane, I'm suddenly very awake. What's happened? He's wearing the same clothes he left the house in last night, but now they're crumpled and smeared with dirt. Evidently, he hasn't been to bed. His baseball cap is on the breakfast bar next to him, marked with spots of what looks like it could be blood. In the place of last night's wide smile is a bruise down the side of his face, a nasty graze and a busted lip. And he doesn't seem to have noticed that I am in the room. His gaze focuses on the fallen pollen from my vase full of yellow foxtail lilies, which he is forming into a neat line on the counter with the index finger of his right hand. Kane? I touch his shoulder. Love, what's happened? Were you mugged? I wish. The way he speaks scares me more than anything in his appearance. I step back, drawing my hand away. You wish you'd been mugged? The kettle clicks in lieu of Kane's answer. I stare at the steam rising from it, fogging the window above the sink, and then force myself to look back at him. Have you been to hospital? I don't need to. He looks up, spreading his arms wide. I'm here, aren't I? I'm alive. You're scaring me, Kane. My voice is loud and shaky. Where did you go last night? At this, his face falls. His bottom lip wobbles like it used to when he was a little boy, and he lets out an awful moan. Lucian jumps up and escapes through the cat flap in the back door. I wish I could go back to then, Mum. What if I hadn't gone out? Oh, love. I move a stool towards him and sit down, clutching at his hands. They are bruised and scratched too. I rub the pollen from his fingertips. Lou's dead, Mum. He fell onto the road. He was hit by a car. No, Kane sobs. We were in the car park, a few floors up. What were you doing in there? In the car park? He blinks. We were getting a lift home. One of the guys was parked up there. I bring one hand away from his and lift it to my neck, pinching at the skin under my chin. How old was he? 18. So young. His poor mother. I squeeze my skin harder until I make myself wince. How did it happen? Kane pulls his hands out of my grip and brings his knees to his chest. He still has his shoes on. How many hours has he been sitting here alone? We were just messing around, and Lou, he was leaning over the wall, shouting stuff at people on the road. He pauses, buries his head in his thighs. We were just having a bit of fun. And then what? He just fell. It all happened so quickly, Mum. He slipped. I think It's okay, love. He sniffs, rubbing his forehead against his jeans. And what about you? Your face, your hands? He lifts his head, pressing his fingers to the bruise on his cheek as if he doesn't know what he looks like. And then he stretches his right hand out in front of him, examining the grazes on his knuckles. It must have been when I grabbed Benny afterwards, he says. He went mental and I got a hold of him, but he smashed me in the face. Okay, Benny's Lou's brother, isn't he? He's the one you work with? Kane nods. He was there then, Benny. He saw it all. Poor lad. He lost it. He started thrashing around. Kane touches his cut lip. It's okay, love. It's okay. I shouldn't be feeling relief, not when a boy has died, but I do. he was just restraining his distraught friend. Nothing more. I get up and hug him hard, bringing his head to my chest and kissing his hair. The scent of sweet alcohol sweat fills my nostrils. You poor thing, I whisper into his curls. Why didn't you wake me when you came home? I didn't know what to say to you. Have you given the statement to the police? We need to think of the practicalities. What do I need to do in order to get him through this? Did they give you a lift back here? There's a sudden stillness in his body, a stiffening of his limbs. It's only then that I notice, as I look across the top of his head into the dining room, that his bike is there, leaning against the radiator. So, nobody brought him home. I hate it when he cycles home drunk. He gently pushes his way out of my arms and looks me in the eyes for the first time this morning. The police, Mum, the police. I don't know what it is. The whiteness of his face, the way he swallows, the rapid blink of his eyes. Something causes a shudder to ripple through me, as though my body knows how much trouble he is in, moments before my brain does. They don't know I was there, Mum. I ran away. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We've had a question for you all the way from New Zealand, would you believe? Kirsten McKenzie would like to know, she loves the tagline. Did you come up with that, or was it from your publisher?
No, that was the publisher. I'm assuming you mean this, but one son lied, one son died.
I think so.
So yeah, no, that was publisher, unfortunately. No, I don't have any of that kind of, they come up with some great things. It's really fun, actually, that whole stage of the publishing process when, you know, they write the blurb and, well, in my case anyway, the blurb and the tagline. And it's great having someone else's eyes on it and their take on it and how they see it. It's like, and good reviews are like that as well, when someone really gets your book and they see it in a great way.
Excellent. And your whiteboard, your plotting whiteboard is also getting a lot of love.
Yeah, look at all that. Way.
Nice.
That's book 3. Very exciting.
And just a personal question for me, how are you managing that? You have 2 children and one is the exact same, born on the exact same day as my son. So how are you doing that?
With difficulty. I'm doing about an hour a day at the moment. I'm kind of eking out some time and then a couple of evenings. And then I'm working on the same basis as I did. So my eldest daughter is 3. So I wrote Keep Him Close. It was all the kind of same timeline when she was little. So I was doing the same kind of thing, I was plotting until she was about 1, and then I started writing in earnest when she turned 1. So yeah, come the end of July, when our little ones turn 1, exciting, that's when I'll start writing properly, and that's when she'll hopefully start doing a day in childcare. And yeah, excellent. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Excellent. Best of luck with it. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, we're down to the last 2. I'm not to rip this one. Mason Cross. Mason Cross, who confusingly also writes under Alex Knight, is the author of the Carter Blake thriller series published by Orion. What She Saw Last Night, his first standalone novel, was published in 2019, and his latest book, Hunted, which I believe is out next month, is published under the pseudonym Alex Knight. The Killing Season was longlisted for the 2015 Theakston's Old Peculier Crime Novel of the Year Award. Woo! And The Samaritan was selected for the Richard and Judy Book Club for Spring 2016. Woo! Most recently, Presumed Dead was longlisted for the 2018 McIlvanney Prize. Mason, I'm running out of woos here. Mason lives in Glasgow with his wife and 3 children. So everybody, please, huge round of applause for Mason Cross.
Thanks, Vic. And just to be confusing, as Vic mentioned, my new book is under a completely different name, under Alex Knight. And the reason for that is this is kind of slightly different from the other books that I've written. It's set in the States like the Blake books, but it's a bit more of a kind of high concept thing. So the idea was just to sort of have a completely fresh new name for it. So we'll see how that does. So this one is out, Hunted, in a couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks tomorrow. And the hook for it came from something I'd read about that they've got in America called an Amber Alert. And this is when a child goes missing in the States, they can now send out a message to any cell phone within the area. So anybody that's got one of these will get a message. It's not a text, it's just something that automatically pings on. They can do it for disasters and terrorist attacks and things as well. But it just really sort of grabbed me, and I thought, what would happen if something went wrong with that and maybe the wrong guy was targeted with it. So I'm just going to read chapter 1 from Hunted. It's a fairly short chapter. I was having a look at it. I like to read books with short chapters, and I quite like to write books with short chapters, but I've gone really to the extreme on this one. I just had a look. I've just had the author copies in, and there's under 400 pages, but it's 102 chapters. So if you like short chapters, this is one to pick up. So just to set the scene, at the beginning of chapter 1, the protagonist, or one of the protagonists, is doing basically what we're all doing at the moment. He's sitting at home, minding his own business, and then there's a banging on the door. The banging on the door was the second indication of the morning that Jake Ellis's life was about to collapse around him. He put the laptop down on the couch and walked quickly through to the cramped hallway of his third-floor apartment. The banging continued, hurrying him along. "I'm coming," he yelled. He was wearing only jeans, so he grabbed yesterday's t-shirt from the floor and pulled it on as the banging was joined by a voice. Urgent, panicking. "Jake, it's Molly. I think Mom's dead." The words hit him like a physical blow. He unlocked the door and threw it open. If Jake had any lingering disbelief about what he was hearing, it would have been dispelled by the sight of her. Molly was 13 years old, tall for her age. Her face was flushed, her long red hair in disarray, some of it matted to the sweat on her forehead. She was wearing black leggings and a grey long-sleeved t-shirt with an anime character printed on it. No coat, even though it was an unusually cool April in San Francisco. The t-shirt, along with her forearms, were covered in blood. A lot of blood. Rachel's blood. He put his hands on Molly's upper arms to steady her and guided her inside, closing the door. "What?" he began, not knowing what to ask first. Was there an accident? He dismissed the idea as soon as the words left his mouth. He could see Molly was in shock, but not just that. She was scared. He thought back to what he had just read on the screen of his laptop and knew that it was no sick joke. "Who did this? Where's your mom?" She shook her head. "I don't know who it was. She was driving me to gymnastics club. We were parking and the window, it just exploded." "Was she shot? Did somebody shoot her?" As Jake talked, he was scanning Molly's upper body and arms for a wound, but there didn't seem to be one. None of the blood was her own. "Where is she?" The urgency in his voice came out like a bark, and she flinched back. She... Molly was shaking, her pupils slightly dilated. Jake had dealt with dozens of people in shock during his career. Hundreds, just like this, covered in blood, disoriented, stunned that, out of nowhere, a previously benign world has decided to turn around and bite them. But this was different, because he was in shock too. He put his hands on her shoulders gently. The fabric of her shirt was damp from sweat. She must have been running for a while. He forced his voice into semblance of calm professionalism. "It's okay. Molly, it's okay. You're safe. But I need to know where your mom is. If she's hurt..." Swallowed, blinked a couple of times. Her nostrils flared as she calmed herself enough to get the words out. "I think she's dead. He shot at me too. I just kept running. I knew you lived here," and Jake felt his stomach dip. He guided Molly over to the couch, having to push her gently down to get her to sit. He knew there was no point pushing her for details. It had to be related to what he'd read on the screen of his laptop a few moments before, and that meant maybe this was all his fault. Wait here, I'm going to get help, he told her. Jake ran back through to his bedroom. The phone was right where he had left it on the nightstand. But before he could touch it, he heard a sharp, keening tone and the screen lit up with a message. It wasn't a text or an email. Before he had a chance to read the words, he recognized the distinctive notification, the rectangle with the rounded edges, the exclamation point inside a triangle, like a road sign warning of unspecified but imminent danger. The notification was an Amber Alert. Like everyone in the Bay Area and across the country, Jake had received more than a few of them in the last few years. He'd even been involved in the process a couple of times in the course of his job, but this one was very different. He scanned the message, part of him knowing what it would say before he had time to absorb the details. A missing child, Molly Donaldson, 13 years old. The suspect was male, Caucasian, 41 years of age, considered armed and dangerous. The suspect's name was Jake Ellis.
Thank you very much. We've changed your name to Alex Knight, by the way, just so if anybody wants to make a note of it. Olga Voitas would like to know if you are going to regrow your luxuriant beard.
That took quite a while. That was my COVID-19 beard. So I've never had a proper beard before, so I thought it was now or never, like a lot of guys that I've noticed on these Zoom meetings. So yeah, I grew that since about early April maybe, and it was pretty bushy. If anybody's got me on Twitter, go back a couple of days and you can see the before and after shots. And yeah, it was cool, but my face feels quite cold, so yeah, I'm regretting shaving it off.
Excellent. And Louise Fairbairn would like to know, are you now in danger of getting confused with all these names?
Oh, I started getting confused a long time ago. I mean, Mason isn't even really my name, so yeah, I'm a man of many names.
Excellent, and that's definitely the way to stay. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Okay, there is one name left in the hat, I promise you, there it is. That's just the tag. Okay, that's not somebody I've forgotten. But next week, all being well, we do have 11 readers for you. Oh, by the way, today, we've actually had our 100th reader here in the virtual bar, so, you know, all's going pretty well here. And last but not least, tonight, number 11, VNATB, number 11, it's Nina Manning. Nina Manning has worked in private households as a chef. Ooh, I heard a rumour she'd actually worked for some of the royals, but she'll be able to clear that up, I'm sure. She has a degree in psychology and criminology and lives in Dorset. Nina is the author of The Daughter-in-Law or The Guilty Wife. I guess she means I'm the guilty wife. And her next novel is due out in October. So everybody, our final reader of tonight, Nina Manning.
Sorry, I've unmuted. There we go. Is that all right? Can you hear me? There we go. Can you hear me? Cool. Yes, royals. Prince Charles, made a few sandwiches for him. A few other royals as well I've rubbed shoulders with over the past, but that's for another time. Yeah, I'm going to do a reading from my current book that's out at the moment, The Guilty Wife. We've just changed the titles, the title of the book, so I'm it sounds a bit weird coming out of my mouth at the moment because I'm just getting my head around the fact that it's a new title. It was called Her Darkest Fear. A few people might know it as that. But we've changed it literally a month after it came out, so it's now called The Guilty Wife. It's a domestic noir novel about a lady called Frankie Keegan who's riddled with guilt after the death of her brother from 20 years ago, and the book is told in two timelines, the present day, and then it flashes back to the 90s, 1998, which is one of my favourite eras, so I have lots of fun memories of that time. And Frankie's drawn back to the memories of that fateful night, and it's also clear at this point that someone else is remembering things from the night as well. And so we just join Frankie in the reading that I'm just about to do now, in the present day, and it's a 20-year anniversary of her brother's accident that's sort of looming, and she's just begun a new job as a product developer. Sorry, because I'm last, I've had a few drinks. So I'm tripping over my own words. I was just slowly getting drunk in the corner listening to everybody's lovely readings. She's just started a new job as a product developer for a luxury condiments company. And last night she was at the weekly office drinks party. So here we are. I opened one eye, but the pain seared through my skull like a knife. My eyesight was hazy. I could barely see. Then the panic set in. I was not in my house. It had happened again, as if things weren't bad enough between me and Damien. I'd slept in a stranger's house. I couldn't remember how I got home or how much I'd had to drink. I had a vague image in my head of being thrown around in the back of a taxi. I tried to sit up so I could get some perspective on my surroundings. A small voice broke through my manic thoughts, and I looked up and I saw Pixie. I said a million prayers of thanks to the universe in the space of 3 seconds. I was at home and I was in my bed. Darling, I croaked as she threw herself onto the bed next to me. I pulled myself to sitting. I didn't know how I got in a taxi, how much it cost, or how I got through the front door. I looked down under the covers. I was still fully dressed. Mummy, you went to bed with your clothes on. Pixie looked highly amused as she tried to pull back the covers and get a better look. Yes, darling, I was so tired last night after work, I just fell straight to sleep. I heard a loud snort coming from our ensuite and I could just picture Damien's face. You worked very late, she said with a hint of interest. I looked at the clock next to my bed, which read 8:06. Still over an hour to go until Pixie needs to be at her dance class. I heard my phone beep a text message and I looked around the room until I spotted it on the floor. Pixie, be a doll and grab Mummy's phone. She obediently jumped off the bed and retrieved it from the floor. She handed it to me and then planted a huge kiss on my head, complete with sound effects, and I felt like the worst mother. I just wanted to grab her and wrap her into the bedclothes with me and stay there all day. Are you ready to go, sweetheart? I said as I navigated my way into my text message, and then my mouth went dry. My heart rate sped up as my mind was going into overdrive, trying to fathom out the meaning of the words I was seeing and why I didn't have the number saved. Mum! Pixie's exasperated voice filtered through, but I still couldn't tear my eyes away from the message. You won't get much out of your mum today. She's got a poorly head. Damien emerged from the ensuite, dripping, wrapped in a towel. Yes, sweetie, I said, finally looking up from the screen, but still seeing the words in front of my eyes. My black leotard. You said you'd buy me one. My heart pounded hard. Did I buy the damn leotard? Then relief, sheer relief. Yes, I did. It's in my car, sweetie. It's in the boot. I'd raced out and bought it on my lunch break yesterday. And where is your car, Frank? Damien said with an air of superiority. Shit, damn, the car was in the staff car park behind the Bliss offices. Pixie, darling. Pixie looked obviously forlorn. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'll make it up to you later. I'll take you to that cafe you like and you can get one of those ridiculous milkshakes with cakes on them. I tried desperately not to return to my phone and study the cryptic message that was plaguing my mind. And I hated winning with sugar, but it was the only hand I had to play. Go and pop on your vest and leggings then, and that'll have to do for today. I'm sure the teacher won't mind for the first lesson. Pixie dutifully hopped off the bed and trotted out of the door. I could feel the weight of Damien's disappointment. Good night, was it last night then? Worth waking the whole house up at 3 a.m? What? I snapped. I knew this was nonsense because Pixie would have mentioned it. If she was woken by anything in the night, we'd put through the long description of it the next morning. Even if she's had a vivid dream, we get to hear the full theatrical version. That's rubbish, and you know it, I said, still itching to get back to my phone. I presume I lost my keys and you had to let me in. Oh, no, Frankie, it was far more dramatic than that, Damien said, pulling on a jeans and t-shirt. I could feel myself burning up with fury. He was enjoying this too much. I was woken up by the doorbell, yes, but it wasn't you. No, it was a very nice man who drives for the taxi firm. He asked me if I would come and remove the unconscious woman from the back of his car before he dropped you outside the local hospital. Unconscious? I stared at Damien, but I knew he was speaking the truth. Before the kids came along, I would often wander off on a night out, and he wouldn't see me until the next morning. The next day, I'd crawl into our flat looking like a waif stray, feeling like hell, with a mouthful of things I wanted to say, but unable to release them. Then a few days later, I'd mumble a half apology. It had been years since the last time. The horrific thing was, I'd no idea of anything after the free drinks had ended last night, and that would have been at around 9 p.m. So I'd lost a whole 6 hours, and I didn't dare tell Damien that. I was just so tired, Damien. I finished a week in a brand new job. That's bloody hard. I passed out in the taxi. Big deal. Damien ruffled his hair dry with a towel. You need to get help, Frankie. Not for the drink. The drink's just the cover-up for what's really going on inside. You need to talk to somebody about Kiefer and about the other person who died that night. Don't you dare, I shouted. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Damien dropped the towel by his side, pulled his lips together and looked at me solemnly. It's been 20 years, Frankie. Why do I feel as though there's so much you need to say yet you won't say it? I ignored Damien's attempt to dig into my past. He rarely asked about that night, except when things like this happened and he began to doubt me all over again. I've done my therapy, I said. He stood at the end of the bed and looked at me gravely. I'll take Maddox to the park for a bit while you get Pixie to her class. And he pulled a sweater from his wardrobe and headed out of the bedroom. I hadn't noticed the tears that were streaming down my face to start with, and then my whole body was shaking with anger as I curled up into a ball under the covers. Pixie waved at me from the middle of the room, looking self-conscious in her leggings and t-shirt. I cursed myself again for not having the leotard at home ready for her. I knew she was nervous. I gave her a wave back that was probably too enthusiastic, but I wanted to feel loved and that I had her back. And once I could see she'd settled into a group with her teacher, I took out my phone and brought up the message again. I hated being that mum who sat there with her phone, but I hadn't been able to stop looking at it since this morning. After I'd finally dragged myself from under the covers to the bathroom, I'd sat on the toilet seat and stared at the message before getting into the shower. Hope you enjoyed yourself last night. And that was it. No sign off or indication of who sent it. I'd been thinking of how to reply all morning before I hesitated any longer. I typed out the words, "Sorry, did we meet last night?" I hit send. I didn't want to appear rude, as my memory of the evening was pretty shady as it was. If this was someone I'd met in the pub or after the pub, then I needed to know what I did and how they got my number. Pixie came running over half an hour later for a drink from her rucksack. "Well done," I told her. "You're doing really well." She gave me a big grin and skipped back over to the floor where she immersed herself in a circle of young girls roughly her age. And I was distracted once more by my phone. As I watched the seconds tick by with no reply, I started to get fidgety. My hangover had come on thick and fast, and the pint of water I drank before I left was not enough to shift the headache that was making my head feel fuzzy. My phone pinged. I looked down and saw a message from Damien. "Hope her first lesson is going well, and that your head hurts." It was a sign that he'd forgiven me at least. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions for you. I've two people, actually, Keith Young and Kirsten McKenzie, are asking the same question: why the title changed so soon? Are you like
it was just a marketing thing, really. We just went with this book title. We thought it was a good one. The book was just about to go out to the Australian market for a big marketing campaign. So yeah, I just thought it was a good time to do it.
Great, thank you. And Chris McGeorge would like to know, a bit of a cheeky one, what does Prince Charles like in his sandwiches?
Well, I thought he'd like cucumber sandwiches, but actually, as I watched him eating it, I thought to myself, he's probably just bored, stupid of eating cucumber sandwiches, but nevertheless, he ate them anyway, so.
Well, at least he was polite. Thank you so much for this evening. Thank you to all 10 of our lovely readers. Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? Don't forget, this is available now. And some closing news. We've just overtaken David Baldacci in the charts. Riddick. Excellent. So go on Twitter to vote for your quote of the week. We'll be popping a vote up shortly. It is between M.W. Craven and M.W. Craven. Roger Moore was outside in the van, or Dalton was a shit Bond anyway. Place your bets. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you again to Martin Stevenson for providing us with some groovy music, one of Simon's musical heroes. Thank you to everyone who's contributed to Noir from the Bar. I don't say it as well as the actors, but anyway. And thank you to everyone who's ordered it. If you like it, please leave a review. If you don't like it, just say nothing. Thank you very much to Simon, as always, for keeping everything spinning, and I mean all of the plates. He's like an octopus. I don't know how he does it. Next week, hopefully we have 11 readers for you. And one of them is a very, very, very special guest. It's actually my crime fiction hero. Keep your eyes on your emails because all will be revealed in the next few days. Until then, see you next Wednesday.